Hello, hello, Kwe, everybody. So welcome to the evening part of our day, everybody. This evening we're doing a panel discussion, and the discussion will be on understanding basic income guarantee, past, present, and future. My name is Randall, and this is Rachel. We both sit on the board of Women's Network PEI, and today we gather on the unceded Mi'kmaq territory of Epiquet, which is located in Mi'kma'ki. So this evening we're going to learn about PEI's unique role in advancing basic income guarantee in Canada and how it would impact the various lives and sectors in Prince Edward Island. We're going to hear updates on local milestones, national efforts, and what lies ahead. It's essential that any basic income program is rooted in Indigenous autonomy and self-determination and the rights of Indigenous people to determine whether a basic income is delivered in their communities and what form it will take. And so today you may have received a card when you arrived. It contains a QR code. This card right here. So there's a QR code on the back of it. And that QR code will bring you to access resources, and that includes the PEI proposal that was created in November of 2023 by Coalition Canada for Basic Income, Revenu de Base, as well as the recent report on basic income guarantee and the potential impacts for gender-based violence. And there's other links on there too, so check those out and grab a card if you haven't. So this evening our event will include a presentation, a panel discussion, and a spoken word. And the spoken word this evening will be created and delivered by Prince Edward Island's Poet Laureate, Tanya Davis, which is amazing, woo!
To start the evening, just move this a little bit here. To start the evening, we would like to introduce our panel moderator, Alexia Riche. Come on up, Alexia. Alexia, and she knows how to dress too, spectacular.
Alexia is awesome.
Yes. So Alexia is a dynamic nonprofit leader, advocate, and community builder. Originally from Mauritius, she immigrated to PEI to pursue her studies, fell in love with the island, and decided to call it home. Currently serving as the executive director of the community sector network of PEI, Alexia leads strategic initiatives that empower nonprofit organizations across the province. She's currently pursuing a Master of Professional Studies in Organizational Leadership. Bravo, that's fantastic. And holds a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Communication, Leadership and Culture, and Diversity and Social Justice Studies from UPEI. She previously served as the Diversity Training Coordinator for Resourceabilities. Beyond her professional work, Alexia is an active volunteer. She currently serves on the Board of Directors for Women's Network PEI, the Advisory Council on the Status of Women, and is a member of the Comité consultatif de la communauté acadienne et francophone. How did I do? You did. Fantastic, thank you. Boy, I had to pull that French out from a long time ago. She also previously held leadership roles with Action Femmes, PEI, PEI Rape and Sexual Assault Center, where I first met Alexia, World University Service of Canada, and many other organizations. Welcome, Alexia.
PEI is so lucky to have her.
No, it's, oh yeah, there it is. Well, thank you, Randall, and thank you, Rachel. Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing today? That's great, great energy. So to start our evening, I would like to introduce Gillian Kilfoyle and Jane Ledwell, who will be providing more information on the fight for guaranteed livable income in PEI. Jane and Gillian.
I'll take the short mic. Well, good evening. My name is Jane.
And my name is Jillian.
I work with the Advisory Council on the Status of Women, and I'm a member of the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income. And I am very proud to be here with the amazing Gillian Kilfoyle to provide some historical context that I hope will satisfy your curiosity about the burning questions of this exciting national conference, which are: why leadership from a gender equality organization? Why a basic income guarantee? And why PEI, other than our beautiful June weather? So I was not a founding member of the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income. I've only been part of the working group for 20 of its 21 years. It emerged as a coalition of allied community groups out of Cooper Institute project that focused on minimum wage. But advocates realized very quickly that to achieve livable incomes, we needed to consider all forms of income as essential. Wages, sure, but also social assistance, disability supports, child benefits, employment insurance, pensions, old age security, and more. All of these needed transformation. So the organizations and individuals that came together with shared values and goals for the Working Group for a Livable Income included from the very earliest days social assistance and housing advocates, people with disabilities and disability advocates, labor unions, groups representing minority languages, newcomers, arts and culture groups, and women's and gender equality organizations. Because of the intensely gendered nature of income inequality, the feminization of poverty, and the transformational power it has for communities when women and gender diverse people have livable incomes. It impacts children whose whole lives are improved by having secure childhoods. It improves the lives of vulnerable adults, especially those who rely on unpaid and underpaid caregiving. It benefits whole families' health and mental health, and it has benefits for social inclusion and for democracy. These are themes we heard all day today in really resonant ways, and that is why leadership from gender equality organizations. After 10 years of working to address inadequacies in social assistance programs and to create more equity and justice in all of those separate income-related programs, as well as improving employment standards and minimum wages, in 2013, the community organizations that make up the Working Group for a Livable Income decided it was time instead to direct and focus our advocacy attention to address low income and to eliminate poverty in PEI through one program, a basic income guarantee that could transform all of the income programs that it would touch and change the lives of the people it would touch. And that is why basic income guarantee. So this timeline shows some of the highlights of work over the years, because momentum was swift after 2013 when we took on this focus. The first round of grassroots community forums across Prince Edward Island and a Cooper Institute Social Justice Symposium all focused on basic income guarantee and revealed a real hunger in the community for justice and rights-based solutions to poverty, and a deep and lived knowledge of the impact that basic income guarantee could have. The wisdom was already there. By 2015, more community forums confirmed the principles community members would not budge on and that are still visible in the work that we do today. A basic income guarantee needed to be based on human rights, province-wide, not a community of the province, a permanent program, not a pilot, and an income supplement model that would include all adults. So inspired by this voice and this vision from communities across PEI, in 2015, during a provincial election campaign, somewhat to our surprise, leaders of all 4 political parties in PEI expressed commitment to pursue a basic income for PEI. This led to the first unanimous motion in the PEI legislature in 2016, Motion 83 to urge government to pursue partnership with the federal government for establishment of a universal basic income project for PEI. In 2017, the Working Group for a Livable Income followed up with more community forums, this time engaging party leaders and MLAs from the 4 political parties as co-hosts of forums in all regions of the province. And from this, the working group articulated more core principles for basic income guarantee: that it be universally accessible, non-conditional, sensitive to income but not exclusionary, and that it be adequate to meet basic needs. We'll talk more on principles later. But from that, the working group also had the chance to expand on that local community hall work and take it beyond the province as well and begin to present the case federally. So by 2019, the Provincial Legislative Assembly established a special committee on poverty and PEI with the task to examine and cost a big program for Prince Edward Island. The committee heard from PEI and national leaders and experts on basic income guarantee. The committee's work endorsed the core principles set out by the Working Group for a Livable Income, and that was accepted unanimously in the Legislative Assembly. And in June 2020, the special committee released a report for a costed model of basic income guarantee, and that report was unanimously adopted by all parties in PEI. The Working Group for a Livable Income has been strong on the moral case and the human rights case for a basic income guarantee, but to set out the economic case required friends and collaborators in positions of responsibility in the PEI legislature and from across Canada. Coalition Canada built on the Special Committee on Poverty's model and their report, and on the unique multi-partisan unanimity in Prince Edward Island in favor of a basic income guarantee to create a PEI proposal that calls on the federal and PEI officials to launch a basic income program. More on that to come as well, but that is why PEI. So whether you live here in PEI or visiting as part of the conference, I hope you will remain curious about the points I just raised. And Jillian and I are going to just raise a few more points about the principles and proposals on basic income. Oh, wait, I was supposed to start on the principles. So I forgot. I felt like I was winding things up. As Randall noted, the first principle of basic income guarantee, when we're talking about a program that is provincial and national and, you know, these kinds of nation-building projects, as they've been referred to recently, we recognize these ideas of provinces and nations are settler colonial constructs, and that first principles, we do have to recognize Indigenous autonomy and self-determination, and that those must be predominant. So I think I got ahead by a slide, but I wanted to say that first. And then just to say that since its inception, whether working on social assistance programs or basic income programs, the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income believes that everyone who lives in PEI has the right to an income that allows them to live in good health and with dignity. And our goal has been to influence the attitudes and actions of the community, of employees and employers, and public policymakers in an effort to make a livable income that can be a reality for all islanders. And that has to be an income that reflects the cost of life's necessities. So we'll skip the next slide, which I just said, and we'll go to the next one, which some of those costs include housing and food, clothing and transportation, child and elder care, health care and supplies. We've had to add over the years communications technologies, access to information and the internet, and the capacity to deal with emergencies, which has been a really fundamental one since the beginning. These are human rights and social rights. These are the necessities of life, the necessities of health, of social inclusion, of democratic participation, and it is our collective responsibility to meet these basic needs, to have a society that can thrive. More principles from Jill.
It's really important. There's a lot of people who support guaranteed livable income or basic income guarantee for different reasons. And so for the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income, it was really important to root the type of program that we're looking for in these guiding principles. And so when we look at a livable income, we're really looking at an individual's and family's ability to maintain a standard of living that allows them to participate in their community, access community services, access continuing education, communicate with their friends and family, to be environmentally responsible, and to save money in the interest of being financially independent. So ideally, a guaranteed livable income would provide for all of those necessities in life and provide that support to individuals and families. I may have gone too far. There we go. So when we're looking at why we need a basic income, of course, it is a very effective way to eliminate poverty. When we're looking at why people experience poverty, it's because they don't have adequate income. And so we have seen governments at all levels. Did my microphone stop working? No, it's okay. Try to solve the issue of poverty without actually giving people money, which really is the solution that is needed. There are other supports that are necessary as well, but it really is a mechanism not only to reduce the rates of poverty, but also to close that gap between extreme wealth and extreme poverty. And we really need to look at income inequality and rising income inequality as one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest things that's tearing at the social fabric in our communities. And I think when we look at, and Tracy touched on this morning as well, when we look at how much wealth has been concentrated in the hands of a few, and I don't mean that as a saying, but like actually just a few people own the equivalent of half of Canada's wealth, it really is the way that greed is kind of tearing apart people's lives in different ways is so unacceptable. And so it's really important when we're looking at poverty reduction that it has to include more of a wealth tax and people who have the most in our society paying their fair share or paying at all in some cases. And so it's really both of those things, both that reduction of poverty, but also closing that gap between rich and poor. It's also a mechanism for increasing gender equality. Like Jane said, so many of the issues that gender equity organizations are focused on are issues related to financial security and economics. And so we know that people who identify as women continue to do a lot of the unpaid caregiving, 2/3 sometimes globally. And that caregiving typically is unpaid work related to childcare, to elder care, or care for adults with disabilities. And the reality is that a lot of work that women do is devalued and it isn't compensated accordingly. And even when people who identify as women are taking on work of equal value as their male counterparts, they're often paid less in the formal workforce as well. And so it's so important that if anyone, any government, policymaker, anyone is committed to gender equity, there has to be an economic and financial change that goes along with that. Automation and AI is huge. It doesn't mean that there won't be any jobs like they have been in the past, but there's certainly situations and tools out there now that an employer who may be needed 50 staff in the past may only need 5. And so we're seeing that a lot of careers and jobs are at risk of being redundant as a result of automation. And it's creating more precarity in markets, which just only furthers the case to have the social infrastructure in place like guaranteed livable income, so as the technology changes and careers change, that people have that support in place. Climate change, we all saw for folks in the East Coast the impacts of Hurricane Fiona and the inability for government to get direct support to people here in PEI. The people who needed the most support were having to line up to show ID to be able to get $300. And they were spending hours lining up to try and get that information. And so we just don't have the social infrastructure in place. And we know with climate change that there will be more extreme weather happening. And so we need something like guaranteed livable income in place, because instead of trying to figure out every time there's a new crisis how to get money, who deserves it, how much do they deserve, how do we get it to them, because, the biggest fear in that case seems to be giving somebody money that they weren't entitled to. Then we have something in place, and when these extreme situations occur, you have infrastructure that you can add to in particular cases. We're also seeing that right now with tariffs, global trade wars, what's happening south of the border. A steel tariff increases. Okay, well, do we have to create a program for steel workers with guaranteed livable income? You have something already in place, and maybe there's additional supports needed in certain situations, but you already have a mechanism for providing that support. Global pandemics, which we've all lived through, CERB in many ways looked like maybe the makings of some type of guaranteed livable income, but we need to go further, and we need to have something that's in place on an ongoing basis instead of just trying to, come up with an acute solution to chronic issues. And it's also really important looking at gender-based violence and the reduction of gender-based violence. There's a big cost of abuse, and often that cost of abuse is absorbed by people who identify as women. And so leaving, if you're able to leave domestic violence or other forms of gender-based violence, you probably have less financial security than you had before. You may have absorbed debt as a result of that relationship or the violence that has occurred. And so guaranteed basic income helps to mitigate some of those challenges. Sorry, I got my slides a little backwards. But who benefits from basic income guarantee? Everyone benefits, whether you're receiving the transfer or not. We also see significant improved health outcomes. Often, people ask, well, how much is it going to cost, without thinking about the costs of not having guaranteed income in place. And we see that, in other places where they have had some type of guaranteed basic income in place, you see a reduction in healthcare spending. And it doesn't matter what percentage that reduction is, healthcare budgets typically don't go down, they go up every year. So if we invest in people upstream, we're able to reduce some of those overall costs in some really key sectors that have become quite costly. And there's specific sectors that might be disproportionately impacted. Think of entrepreneurs and small business. Often they say, a new business owner, they may not be able to draw salary for the first couple of years of opening their business. Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a guaranteed livable income, what type of small business idea might you create, or what type of risk might you take on in that situation? And so there's a lot of different groups who will really benefit from this type of guaranteed livable income, and it's something that really ultimately will benefit all of us in different ways. There's a lot of myths out there around guaranteed livable income. People think it's too expensive. People think that people won't want to work, and that we won't need any other social programs if we just have this one thing called guaranteed livable income. And I think we talked a lot about that today in different sessions in different ways. But guaranteed basic income is absolutely something we can afford. Is it something that we can afford not to do? That's not so clear. But it's really clear that if we had more of a progressive tax system, if we were to institute some type of wealth tax where your first 20 million just stays the same, but we put a higher tax rate on that 21st million that you earn in a year, which apparently is communism, but doesn't really sound like that to me. It would only impact 2,000 households in Canada, and it would generate $9 billion in revenue. It just makes absolutely no sense. And so there absolutely are ways to pay for it. And people are still motivated to work. People are very motivated to earn beyond their basic needs. This provides people with more stability if they want to train, if they want to transition their careers. But that workforce attachment doesn't decrease. And this is often a myth that gets created by employers who rely on low wages. And my view is that low wages are more of a barrier to workforce attachment than guaranteed livable income would be. We also had some wonderful presentations today really outlining how guaranteed basic income has to be an investment in public services and social infrastructure that is complementary to what is existing. It in no way removes the need for other social programs, but it can be a complementary investment in the health and well-being of Canadians. And so it's not about removing existing social programs, but it's adding in guaranteed livable income to ensure that people have more support available, but we still need the existing services that are out there, and we still need a strong investment in public services. And so those are some of the key myths that come up that we always try to dispel, because a lot of it is just people who are probably benefiting from the status quo, are benefiting from the exploitation of people's labor without proper compensation, who are kind of reinforcing this idea that these myths are true. And it's also just really important to highlight the uniqueness in PEI. PEI is an excellent place to start a program for guaranteed basic income. Like our public health care system was started in Saskatchewan and then rolled out to the rest of Canada, we really see an opportunity for something similar to happen in PEI. In PEI, we can start demonstrating how to implement a guaranteed basic income. We can figure out what is that interaction between different levels of government. What are some adaptations that might be needed in the implementation to strengthen the program that would be developed? Those learnings can be identified through proper evaluation here in PEI, and then we can roll out a national program. It's a small jurisdiction. Like Jane pointed out, there's been decades of grassroots work happening in PEI that has really created the support and I think the energy for guaranteed basic income. And there's advocates from all across Canada who are advocating for PEI to be the place to start. And many of us may know, if you're from PEI, sometimes it feels like it goes in the other direction. Like things happen in other jurisdictions and then PEI might be one of the last provinces to implement something. Not always, but in some cases. But I think when we look at guaranteed basic income, we really want to reverse that trend. We want to start in PEI. There's been work done by Coalition Canada for Basic Income, Revenu de Base, where they've done a lot of the work for elected officials and government departments. They've created a pathway to start that implementation. And so PEI is the place to do it. Now's the time to do it. And we just kind of wanted to provide that overview of the work that's been done here, the work that we'd like to see in the future, and why it's so important that we have a guaranteed livable income. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane and Jillian. This was very insightful. And I see that I have some time, so if I got a bit ahead of myself earlier, I was too excited for the presentation, and I actually forgot to introduce who Jane and Jillian were, and I just assumed that everybody knew who they were. So I'll read their bios now. So Jillian Kilfoyle was born in Western PEI and has lived and worked across the country. Jillian has worked in the non-for-profit sector for almost 20 years and is currently the executive director for Women's Network. Jillian has previously been involved in organizations such as Katimavik, Apathy is Boring, and Girls Action Foundation. Before joining Women's Network in October 2016, before joining in 2016, sorry. So Jillian is currently a board member of the Community Sector Network of PEI and the Chair Circle on Gender Equality. And then Jane Ledwell is the Executive Director of the PEI Advisory Council on the Status of Women and a long-time member of the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income. In her spare time, she is also a writer and editor in a house full of artists, family members in Charlottetown. Let's give it again for Jillian and Jane. Fantastic. So now we'll move on to the panel, the second part of the evening. So I will, just a second, have to stay to my script here. So I will be now reading the bios for the panelists, and as I will read, they will be coming up the stage here. So Lauren King is a first-generation organic farmer in Bonshaw, PEI. Lauren and their wife, Soleil, are the co-owners, operators of Soleil's Farm, a 7-acre mixed vegetable farm, which they run alongside their amazing farm crew. Lauren is dedicated to providing their community with fresh, delicious, local organic vegetables, supplying over 30 island restaurants and stores, as well as 200 families through a community-supported agriculture and food security program. All right. Next, we have Carly Howell. So Carly is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and recording artist based in rural Epecuet. Their creative work explores the intersection between jazz, folk, classical, and Brazilian music, and has the principle of improvisation and co-creation at its core. As a curator, they are interested in personal and historical narratives and work to center the voices of feminized and queer musicians. As a social justice accomplice and advocate for artists, Carly has been working in recent years to help musicians achieve safer, more sustainable working conditions and to receive meaningful, dignified support during the pandemic and beyond. They are a member of the PEI Working Group for Livable Income and the Copper Institute. Next, we have Mike McDonald. So Mike is the executive director of the Upper Room Hospitality Ministry / PEI Food Banks. So he has been with the Upper Room since 2001, where he continues to lead the organization through some extremely challenging times and has led them through extreme growth. While Mike oversees the operation of the Upper Room's Food Bank and Soup Kitchen, he also operates PEI Food Banks, which is the provincial association for food banks in the province. Mike has been involved in all aspects of the operation of the Upper Room for almost 25 years and has a passion helping islanders in need. He has worked in many local organizations to serve islanders and is a past board member of Food Banks Canada and continues to work with them closely to relieve hunger today and prevent it tomorrow in PEI and Canada. Now, we were supposed to have another panelist with us today, Melissa Peter Paul, but unfortunately, we've had regrets from her tonight, so she will not be able to join us. Okay, so I will now turn to you all, folks, to get started with the panel. So I will start with my first question. So tell us about your work and how basic income could impact your sector. And feel free to share real-life challenges that you or people you work with face because of inadequate income. Maybe we'll start with you, Mike, and then we'll go that way.
Great, thank you. And, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here tonight, so thank you. Working with food banks and seeing individuals come into the food bank or to the soup kitchen every day, people are challenged every day and facing their own crisis every day. We ask questions on, why they need to use the service, and it's constantly the cost of living, and whether that is the price of groceries, whether it's the home heating, and of course, housing. So those are, they're the people that we see day in, day out that I know it was mentioned, Fiona and the pandemic. Well, they're in crisis every day. And, they do need that support, not just through a pandemic or through a disaster, but they do need it from day to day. Certainly for our organization, or every food bank across the country, food banks can only do so much. Food banks are at the breaking point, and there needs to be, some action, to kind of relieve some of that pressure off of the food bank system. So hopefully, a basic income, I think, is that one item that would affect the population as a whole and would certainly help our industry.
So I'd like to start by sharing a bit about how I became involved in advocacy work for basic income. So back in 2019, my partner Soleil, who I farm with, she burnt out. I think many of us know that farming is hard work, and it can really take a toll on folks. At that point, Soleil had been running the farm solo for 7 years, and she burnt out to the point that she almost completely lost her short-term memory for 2 months, and that winter she could barely get off the couch. She went from working 12-hour days, running an entire farm operation, to us really celebrating the day that she was able to walk the 500 meters to the end of our driveway to check the mail. And it was the season following this that I joined the farm. I'd had an off-farm job prior to that. And we put a few years of really intentional work in with a business coach to figure out, partly it was bringing me on as, bringing me into this farm that Soleil had created and been running herself. But the priority was really to look at how do we make this sustainable, how do we focus on well-being and resilience for the people as well as the land. So we put in a few years with a coach, which was incredible work for us, and it really changed us as people. It changed our farm, and it was in one of the sessions that our coach just asked us this magic wand question. She said, if you could wave a magic wand and create your dream life, what would that look like? And so we took some time and thought about it, and we shared our answers. And what we came up with and what we shared, it was things like we dreamed about having enough time during the growing season to actually connect with some of our friends. We wanted enough time and energy to preserve the food that we were growing. We wanted enough time that we could volunteer, do some board work for organizations that we cared about, having the time to care for our aging parents in different ways. And our coach, after we shared that, she said, okay, well, that feels very achievable. That feels pretty reasonable. And in that moment, the two of us, we felt so defeated because it felt impossible. It felt like the years of work to getting this business to a point where it was viable on paper, it still wasn't a viable business for the people who are running it. And to hear someone say, well, this feels like not that huge a dream, that was hard to hear. And something that came out of that conversation was a great discussion about how no matter how much change we can affect on our one little farm in the rolling hills of Anshaw, we're still just a little farm within the bigger picture of agriculture. And so we realized that as soon as we had capacity to do it, we really needed to focus on some of the bigger systemic issues and start doing work so that we weren't just trying to affect change on our one tiny little farm. And so it was really out of that conversation that Soleil started work on this food hub that works directly with small-scale farms here on PEI, and I joined the working group for a livable income. Because basic income would have a tremendous effect on the lives of farmers, including farm workers. And it feels like a very hopeful thing that, as we heard already, as folks in this room know, it would benefit everybody. And I can see so clearly within the farming sector that it would really have a tremendous effect. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there for now. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm just so glad to be here to speak with you all today, and in such wonderful company. I am a musician. I've been a working musician, getting paid to play music since I was not even old enough to drive myself to gigs. My mom drove me to my first gigs in our Dodge Caravan. So I've been doing this for a long time, for 20, 25 coming up years, and you're told in the arts industry that if you put in your time and you pay your dues, that it will pay off. But there's never a timeline on that. And so you start out fresh-faced and bright-eyed and full of passion, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to work hard at this, and then people will see my hard work, and this will pay off. And I've been doing this a long time, and I feel so lucky to still get to be a professional artist and make the majority of my living as an artist, and it is still so extraordinarily hard. And I think that there's a lot of layers to that, and one layer is that there's so much invisible labor in arts work. And first of all, actually, just labeling art as work. Art equals work. Because, yeah, right? Art equals work. We have to say it over and over and over again because we have this mystified notion of that art is this magical, mystical thing, and that it just comes out of the universe and it just appears, and it is this mythical unicorn in a way. And that if you're an artist and that you're doing it because you love it, if I had a nickel for every time somebody was like, oh, but you love what you do, so that must make it worthwhile, right? And it's like, well, that is why I keep doing it. I love it. I love it so much that I exist despite the extreme precarity, actually, that is there. And, sometimes we hear this idea of living to paycheck, and that is a very hard living. But as an artist, you're living gig to gig. You're living day to day. You're living moment to moment of I have this gig today, but I actually don't know when the phone is necessarily going to ring again. And I have to just keep showing up for this thing and keeping myself at the top of my game until the phone rings again. And of course, as you develop in your career, hopefully the phone starts ringing more, you start to trust more that those gigs will come, but you don't know. And you don't know from day to day or week to week, or especially year to year. And one year you might have an amazing year, and then the next year it could just be flat out. And that is not a reflection of your quality as an artist. It is a reflection of so many other things, a result of so many other things. And so I think that first of all, just the myth that that art just sort of happens, and that it isn't work, and that there's so much work underneath that we don't even see. So thinking about some of those things, just to illuminate them, if I play am asked to play a gig, I get paid usually, and I mean, it obviously depends on the circumstances. There are obviously people who are paying very well, but or recognizing these labors. But generally, I get paid for the time that I show up to play that gig. So if I'm playing on a Friday night, I get paid from 7 to 9 on a Friday night. But I've spent 30 years practicing my instrument, and probably many hours that week practicing. I'm preparing for this gig in particular. I have to learn the music. I have to do all of the administration of scheduling the rehearsals and signing the contracts and going back and forth. That is all unpaid time. All of the supplies that I need for my instrument, all of the transportation costs, none of that is factored into the fees that I get on a regular basis. Unless people are thinking about those things and have more progressive budgets. And so there's so many invisible costs, and there's so much invisible labor that goes into just showing up for that gig. And then if I have to create something, if a visual artist, for example, who's creating works, you have to buy all of those materials, and you have to put in hundreds of hours of creating a body of work, and hundreds of hours of trying to workshop and network and meet people until you get that opportunity to show that work in a gallery. And then maybe somebody buys your painting. And it can be years of investing in an arts career where there's next to no income from it. And we take for granted that that's just what artists are doing. Oh, we're just like investing in our careers until that magical moment comes where you get discovered. But that's not the way that most people's arts careers are working. We're just year after year, even when you are discovered, just working from opportunity to opportunity to opportunity. And every employment opportunity is a whole, it's a whole job. And so when you think about if you're going to a more traditional form of employment, you do your interview once, you sign your contract once, and then maybe you're going to work on a pretty regular basis, and that's all kind of out of the way. But every time you take a gig, you're negotiating all of those things. And then as an independent artist, I'm also responsible for promoting the gig, for getting people to the gig, finding funding to promote or to underwrite the creative process, and so I think number one is just all of the invisible labor that is not paid is a really big part of it. And so the first thing that I wanted to say, just what would BIG help us do? Well, BIG would help us do the work of making art, actually. And just speaking about dispelling myths, this idea that people won't work. All of the artists that I know, all we want to do is just make art. And if art is work, it means that all we want to do is work. We want to do the work that we feel like we're here to do. And we can't afford to do that work often, and we can't sustain it. And so just valuing all of the work that we have to put in behind the scenes to show up and do the thing that is the public thing, I think is one way that BIG would really support the arts industry, is just by supporting the unpaid work of it all. And then the second layer of it is that most of us don't have access to the security systems that do exist. So employment insurance or health insurance or leave, medical leave, bereavement leave, all of these things are usually not available to you as an independent artist. And so there's just no margin of error. You're working 50, 70, 100 hours a week just trying to make it happen. And if one little thread pulls out of there, it all falls apart. And I can say that happened for me. in addition to my performing career, I have also done a lot of arts education work. And there was a moment in my life where I was like, I really want to see if I can like hustle and spend a couple of years like really working on my art, but also really like working in this arts education field where I was making more money. It wasn't extreme money, but it was a little bit steadier. And I was like, I feel like if I could just like hustle just for a little while, then maybe I could get somewhere. And what I ended up doing was burning myself out to the place of a full mental breakdown, and I worked until the very last day until I couldn't go anymore, and pretty much collapsed, and I took many months off in a really pretty severe mental health breakdown, and I had no social safety net, and so that I went deeply into debt, and that became another thing that was very hard to recover from. And so just sustaining people in the arts needs some sort of safety net. You need to be able to just step back and take a break sometimes. You need to be able to take care of yourself, especially when all of those other support systems aren't necessarily there. And then I think just speaking to the nature of the arts in general, we look to artists to be emotional. We look to artists to be vulnerable. We want artists to feel the things and then express the things to us. And it is incredibly hard to feel the things and express the things when you're in an extreme state of precarity and vulnerability and need. And it is very hard to try to be the messenger for those things when you don't feel like you can even take care of it yourself, and it's very hard to be creative when you're in those places. And so I think to recognize that if we need artists to do what they do, then we need to support their basic dignity, so that it's not just about the moment to moment, but it is about this sustaining their lives. And the pandemic showed us the value of arts, and it showed us the lengths that artists will go to support the people around them. And I think that when we sustain artists in even the smallest of ways, we see that they return those efforts back into the community in a multitude of ways. And that is also work that we're not always able to put a price tag on, but actually it is invaluable, and the least that we can do is sustain the people who are doing that kind of invaluable work. And then the final point that I wanted to make is just around gender-based violence in the music industry and safer working conditions. I know for myself, as a younger person, you're told to say yes to everything. You're told, yeah, just say yes to everything, and like the great opportunities will come, and then you'll be able to sort of like find your path. But in the process of saying yes to everything, you say yes to a lot of really egregious things. And I worked in a lot of really awful settings and with people who treated me very badly. But it was a paycheck, but I was like, I have to be there, or this could be a good connection, or I'll just put up with this bad behavior for a little longer because I think this gig is gonna lead somewhere, and you're always waiting for it to lead somewhere. And, or you just need that paycheck. There's lots of physically unsafe working conditions that a lot of people put up with as well, because we just wanna do the work of being an artist. And so you put up with a lot. And I think that a basic income guarantee could not only change the outcomes for the participants, for the artists themselves, of not having to go to those kinds of working conditions, but I like to think that it could change the industry itself, that if people don't need to put up with that anymore, that those folks will have to change their practices because they won't be able to just take advantage anymore. So yeah, I think BIG could have a lot of really, really huge impacts.
Thank you, all of you. So now, before I move to the next question, did any one of you wanted to respond to whatever anyone said, or are we good to move to the next question?
I just, what Lauren said about just this person saying like, well, that seems pretty achievable. I think that's like so salient because when you're not in that situation, looking from the outside, it's easy to just be like, well, here's a 3-step plan. Oh, well, why don't you just do this? The number of times that people have told me, oh, well, if you put your videos on YouTube, people go viral on YouTube. People make a lot of money on YouTube. It's like, even just that, like, oh, just throw your videos up on YouTube. That's a massive process. Like, that's actually like involves a whole lot of skill and equipment and labor. And then I'm just throwing my videos up on YouTube, hoping that something will go viral and then I'll monetize it. And actually monetizing things on YouTube is actually a complicated process also. So like, I think, yeah, the idea of like, well, that doesn't seem so hard, or like, that's just like, oh, no problem, is really salient, and the principles of big of being accessible and not judgmental, and that we're removing those barriers to access means that we're not trying to like problem solve or like micromanage other people's lives, and we're also not trying to find like simple solutions to complex problems. We're giving people the agency to make choices that will impact their own lives, and like those things that you imagined are beautiful, wholesome things that everyone should have access to. And we shouldn't all have to hire like a business planner to just find out how we can like have some time for our community or spend time with our aging parents. And that should just be something that should be accessible to people, and that you should be able to problem solve that for yourself with the adequate resources.
I'd actually like to add to that, because a few things that came up when all of you were talking were this constant state of crisis, being personal crisis or crisis of our clients, people we work with. And when you're not in it or you don't really understand it, it is, as you say, you can come up with like this 3-step plan or whatever, but it might just not be realistic. How nice would it be to have this safety net, to have big, where you don't have to be in this dangerous situation, where you don't have to burn out, and you can just do the things that, you know, are good for yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to the next question. So from your perspective, what difference would basic income make in the future of PEI? And maybe we'll start the other end now and come back this way.
Sure, you're hearing a lot from me right now. Yeah, well, I mean, we are so proud of our arts community here. We take so much pride in the arts community, and we also gain massively economically as a province from the investment of artists and from the arts scene here. But it is very hard to be a full-time artist on this island. It's very hard to sustain a living that you're here full-time. I love living here. I moved here about 5 years ago. But I travel off-island often, and I'm very lucky to have beautiful opportunities that I choose to take, and also it is a way that I sustain my career in the arts is to be here when the work is here, which is mostly in the summer, and then to be away in the winter when the work is elsewhere. And we have such an incredible wealth of I'll speak mainly from the performing arts, because that is the industry that I'm in. We have such a huge wealth of performing artists here, and most of them have to leave to really expand their careers, or just to get a foothold. And a lot of them would just love to stay home. A lot of them would love to be here, participating in their communities more, hanging, with friends and family, and being able to just live a steadier life, a healthier life, a more sustainable life. But the money isn't here for that always. And the opportunity to be here on a more full-time basis means that artists can also reflect the life that we live here. I think that we know that one of the roles of arts is to reflect the world around us and to reflect our collective humanity, to reflect our collective experiences, maybe sometimes through an individual lens, but we can only do that when we're here. And so if we really want to see PEI reflected in the artwork, then we need to sustain the lives of artists here. And that means that we will see artwork that reflects the place that we live. We will see artists being in the communities that they live in and being engaged in those communities or being sustained in those communities. I think the artists are engaged often, but being sustained by the community, and being sustained to be in the community, is a two-way street. So I think that we would see even a much more vibrant scene and a year-long scene of artists that can really, stay focused in their artwork.
PEI is full of, beautiful rolling fields. We have taglines like "We're Canada's food island," and I think we're seeing it a lot more recently. But especially in recent years, we've seen that we really we feel the precarity in a very different way as an island, and we need to strengthen our local food system. We've felt that vulnerability in lots of ways recently. Increasingly erratic weather causes, incredible issues on our farm. The increase in winds that we've had is one of our biggest stressors. Increased seasons of drought, and then the intensity of the rain falling all at once. A lot of these things are making farming riskier and riskier and harder for folks. We've seen global supply chains kind of wreak havoc and increase all of the costs associated with doing business. Often, local farm products have been kind of seen a bit as like a niche or elite kind of product that's being offered. Typically, small little farms will sell directly to higher end restaurants. But in the last few years, when we've seen E. coli outbreaks and drought in California and then flooding in California, and the cost of romaine skyrocketed, the little diner at the end of our road, they started buying lettuce mix from us because we started being the affordable option. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. We do work really hard to make our product affordable, but we also need to recognize that there are hidden costs to cheap food. It's often that people are being exploited, that the land is being exploited. There are costs behind cheap food. So we need to strengthen our island's food system. I think often folks talk about food security, thinking about food insecurity affecting folks with low income. But really, as an island, it affects all of us. We all know that if we have a snowstorm, if there are high winds and the bridge gets closed down, it doesn't take long for grocery store shelves to go bare. So food security, it affects all of us. It's not, it's not an issue only affecting low-income folks. And we have tons of farms here, but we also have a lot of exports on this island. And so recognizing that link between the small farms and really looking at how much we're importing food and how much our food could be supplying the folks here on the island. A basic income, it would support new farmers looking to enter into farming, which is an increasingly pressing need. In 2022, I believe Stats Canada put out that the average age of farmers was 58. And so we have an aging pool of farmers, and the pool of new farmers coming in, that pool is shrinking pretty rapidly. And so we need to make farming a viable career option for folks, and we need better support for new farmers as land prices are increasing, as margins get tighter and tighter, and as I said, as weather becomes increasingly erratic, it just the risks are increasing, and the costs are increasing, and we need to figure out better supports for folks who want to grow food, and a basic income would absolutely support that. So not only would a basic income support new farmers looking to enter into the field, but it would also support farm workers. Farm workers are such a crucial element to our food system, and they are the most precarious people in that system. The seasonality of the work and the low wages, they make it a really challenging career path. There often aren't many benefits associated with farm work, and farm work is often looked at as not being skilled labor, but it is incredibly highly skilled labor. Having returning employees, that is a huge gift to a farm, not having to spend all the time training new people year after year. And if we're able to help stabilize, for farm workers, they face a lot of challenges, and if there's better support to them, if there's a safety net offered to them, so that they don't feel like they have to sacrifice so much in order to do this work that often they love to do, it helps not only them, but it also helps the farm in a huge way. So I think looking at what does that viable livelihood look like for farm workers, that needs to be right up there. It's not only the farm owners who are struggling with a viable livelihood. We need to look at the people who are by and large growing all of the food that we eat, and so that includes justice issues for migrant workers. We need to look at who are the folks who are having trouble accessing this type of work, maybe because they don't have inherited wealth that is allowing them to choose to make the sacrifice to do this low earning job. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I think it would have some major impacts on our economy. When people have money, they spend money, and I think it would really support every sector in the province. I do think, of course, it will also help with our healthcare and also in our education system. I think mainly it will help the individuals receiving it. It will allow people, to further their education. It will allow, young people to excel in school. It will allow people to eat healthy and, buy those fresh local products that have a direct impact on their health. So I do think, in the long term, it will have great effects on the province through the education system, through the health system, but immediately, it will help those individuals that do receive it and can make those choices on how to spend their money and, really how to live a healthier life.
Thank you all. And again, do we want to respond to anything anyone said? No. Okay, perfect. We'll move on to the next question. So what can people do to promote the need for basic income in PEI and the rest of the country? And I'll leave it free to whoever wants to start this time, maybe?
Can you say it one more time?
Oh, yes, of course. So what can people do to promote the need for basic income in PEI and the rest of the country?
I'll just start by saying I think we need to continue to talk about it, and we need, to find champions throughout the community and throughout the province. Certainly our provincial government leaders. I think we need to find those champions and keep, telling the benefits of it. I am a little concerned with the federal government right now, and they're distracted with other things, so I really do think we need to concentrate at the provincial level and make sure that people know that it should be a priority.
I feel like this room and this conference is full of folks who have great suggestions and very actionable strategies for how we should be advocating for it. So I am keen to hear from other folks. I think that, as we heard, all parties signed on and agreed that a basic income is an important project that we should explore on PEI, and holding the government to account, I think, is incredibly important. I also see the importance of continuing to talk to our neighbors, folks who might have different ideas about it, and taking the time to break down some of the misinformation that's out there. Carly talked about how artists are working so hard. I think farmers too. I don't know a single farmer who's in it to get rich. Yeah. I don't think you'd lose any farmers if you brought them up to a living wage. And I think that what I found in having some conversations is we need to have these conversations where we can get at class solidarity. There are a lot of folks who, they have ideas, and they might make decisions acting as if it's more likely that they'll become a millionaire or a billionaire rather than find themselves in a pretty precarious situation. And I think that, having the conversations with folks who might have pretty different ideas from us and finding that common ground, I think those conversations are often worthwhile.
Yeah, conversations for sure. I have two thoughts about this. The first came from a panel that I attended this morning. We were talking, there was this phrase of, if you fill the gaps, then they, the decision makers, think the problem is fixed. And a lot of the gaps get filled by unpaid labor. It is labor, but it is unpaid, or it is underpaid labor. But people are doing it because they care. And I bet this room is filled with people who do a lot of unpaid labor, volunteer work, a lot of time that they put in at their job that isn't really, paid for, or maybe you're working at a not-for-profit and you're definitely working at a wage that is lower than what it would be in the private sector, and you're like, but I believe in the work that I'm doing. And so then the powers that be are like, well, the work is getting done, so we don't have to think about it. And so one of the things that they spoke about in the panel this morning was considering, working into metrics what the paid labor is and what the unpaid labor is. Because when you consider both of those things, then you get a broader spectrum of how much time and energy and effort is going into this thing. And we can have an idea of all of those efforts that are going unrewarded. And I do want to make clear that the principles of BIG it's not just about work, right? We actually need to detach from this idea that the only way that we should earn, that we have to earn a dignified living. I don't believe that is true. If for whatever reason you can't work in any of these traditional senses, I 1000% still believe that you deserve a dignified life. But I also really respond viscerally to this, misinformation or this misunderstanding or this myth that stands in front. It is a lot at the forefront of the reasons why people aren't more ready to move forward on this. Even very progressive people that I speak to, very community-minded people that I speak to, are like, well, but we need labor, we need a workforce, like people won't work anymore. And that is a real, an argument that really stops the train a lot of the time. So that is why I speak about work, but I just wanted to underline that. But yeah, so first of all, just looking at like all of the unpaid labor and finding a way of valuing that, I think puts into perspective for people the need to value the efforts that people are putting in and the disproportional way that we reward people's efforts in this society. I don't think that Galen Weston is working harder than a lot of the people in this room, you know, but we all know that he's made more money in the time that this panel has happened than most of us will make in our whole lives. So, you know, and sure, he's working, but not harder than a lot of us. And so we have this very inequitable distribution. And so, yeah, considering all forms of labor as important and valuable, in addition to considering all forms of life as valuable. And the second is, I've been thinking about this a lot because for me it's a no-brainer. For many of us in this room, it's a total no-brainer. It's like, but why can't we see, like, the numbers are there, the social argument is there, the moral argument is there, like, why is this so hard for people to get on board with? Especially in the wake of the pandemic, where we saw that an imperfect form of income guarantee dramatically changed the outcomes for this country. And yet it didn't change the attitudes towards a basic income guarantee in a way that has impacted change around that issue. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think that when we are seeing our social systems not function in the ways that we need them to function, when the education system isn't necessarily meeting our needs, when the healthcare system isn't meeting our needs, when, you know, even CERB didn't meet a lot of people's needs. For artists, it wasn't available initially. We really had to advocate for it, and you're like, wow, the system is not here for me. Then it's really hard to put your vote or your advocacy behind a imaginary system when already the systems that are there are really dysfunctional or they're not working for you. And so then people are like, well, I just have to take care of myself. If I can't trust the systems, then I have to take care of myself and my own. And we get into these very closed-minded or closed attitudes of just trying to protect ourselves. And then that just rolls into voting in our own best interest and like supporting policies that are supporting individuals because we feel like we're surviving as individuals and not as a community. And so I believe that the more that we can support our communities and the more that we can bolster those systems, but also just be the systems for one another, when we can show people that there is a form of support that is there for them if they trust in the collective good, and that if they invest in the collective, then the collective will also give back to them. I don't love transactional analogies or this idea of transactional thought, but I do think that in order to entrust our individual security to a larger system, in a way that we're really putting our votes and our time and our energy and our value sets behind, we need to know that we can trust them in some small way. And so showing people what that trust looks like, having mutual aid, community engaged supports, shows people that they don't just have to rely on themselves, and it allows them to think about big systems that could extend this idea of mutual aid and community support, and that we're taking care of the community and that the community takes care of us.
Thank you. That was amazing. And just to reiterate, because I think one of the things that you said was so powerful. One person's individual voice is strong, but our collective voices together is so much stronger. And I really want to reiterate that and share that with everyone, that together, when we work together and come together for the greater good, for the good of the community, for everyone's good, there's so much power and so much potential in that. So let's give another round for our panelists, please. Thank you. And so to close our evening, it is now my pleasure to introduce Tanya Davis. Tanya attended the conference today, and as the conference poet, she spent the day observing, listening, and absorbing the information. She then distilled her thoughts into a piece written specifically for the event and the issues at hand. So now I'm going to read Tanya's bio. So Tanya is a writer, and a performer based in rural Epequet, Prince Edward Island. She has released 4 records and 2 books, including How to Be Alone, a collaboration with filmmaker Andrea Dorfman. She works across artistic discipline, creating for the page, the stage, the stereo, and the screen. Tanya is also PEI's current Poet Laureate. Tanya.
Thank you. This one, yeah. Hi, everybody. To clarify, I did start this poem a few days ago because I wanted to listen to the conference, so I did a lot of preparation before I got here. It was a real treat. Can you all hear me well? What if I'm looking down at my paper like this? Can you still hear me? Great. It was a real treat to be here at the conference and to listen to the panels that I attended today and to just take it in. There's a lot of information, and this is just one distillation from my little head about some of the things I read about and listened to, and a few other notes I was able to scribble today while listening. I'm at this conference as a poet. To listen, make connections, and synthesize, I'm at this conference as a person living and working on PEI. I am here as a participant, an attendee. I brought my questions with me and my curiosity. I am here to learn. I had a lot to read before I started writing this piece because I realized I didn't know much about basic income guarantees. Something about money. Something about a minimum for everybody. And it sounded good, but I did have questions, such as, how would it work? Could we actually implement it? Is it possible to just give money to everybody like that? In other words, even as a progressive leftist, I have had my biases. Even as a sort of socialist, I wasn't totally buying it. Even as the poet tasked with the act of describing it, I have been unsure, ignorant, or uninformed of the story behind it. I lead with this to situate myself as an average member of the public. We don't know what we don't know until someone enlightens us, or until we approach our ignorance on our own accord. But that's not always easy. We might need a reason, or an invitation, or an open door. A confluence of people with skills to change the discourse, which could change the whole course of events. But before the good words reach enough ears at the right time, whole eras of change can lay dormant, entire paradigms of progress on pause. We may be poised for revolution, or just a better way to do things. We may have tools at the ready, we might have done enough studies, We might have ample proof to back our theories and our claims, but until we have tended the roots of any stubborn assumptions, nothing new will bloom or change. And of course, we've been trying to tend the roots. It's just that they're tangled. It's just that they're endless. It's going to take every strategy we have in us, all audacity, and all our incandescent rallying cries burning bright enough to shine through the fog of our tired and outdated ideas. If we want to build more support for new ones, including something as unfamiliar to most folks as basic income, we're going to have to tell different stories and question the stories that we've been listening to. This is a tall order, as you all surely know. There is a world order and powerful forces that don't want to see it go. There is the fact that we don't know what we don't know, and so it's hard to imagine something else. For instance, we've been living under capitalism for so long that we can't see the burning forests for the over-harvested trees. We can't see how we've been enticed by wants at the cost of unmet human needs, and then set against each other in an illusion of scarcity. As if solidarity is only a catchphrase in the pamphlets of activists and not a guiding principle that should be in all of our politics. As if divisive policy will solve any of this. This, our global suffering. This, our local strife. The story of basic income cannot get a word in edgewise. We can't hear it over the jeers of competition. Well, every hero on a journey took a full meal with them, carefully packed by a worker in a kitchen. Unpaid labor fuels major winnings, and low wages keep the world as we know it spinning. Except the world that we know is spinning way out of sync. Human value is intrinsic, at least it ought to be, and yet we equate worth with productivity. And we measure that productivity by its contribution to economy, thus attaching our value to the money that we make. Many people can't hear a story about basic income because they're still listening to stories criticizing the welfare state. Our ideas on poverty are outdated, but there are people in power who still blame it on people with less power than them instead of how it actually happens. Through crises of food and climate and housing, systemic oppression and structural violence. Because the rights of the market are held and protected above all else, including the people just trying to survive in it. What if we wanted to thrive in it? Would we appeal to hearts or logic? What's more impressive, a self-made man or the knowledge that no self is made out of context, and no one gets rich in a bubble? No one is poor without someone else's profit, and many profit off of struggle, and that imbalance burdens all of us. Poverty is a result of poor policy, and poor policy is a mistake we could learn from and change. Poor policy is a mistake, but only forgivable until it is a choice. A basic income guarantee could be an amends we make. It could be a stabilizing force, a resilient, life-changing strategy, if it is based in basic human rights and not charity, if it is indeed universal, freely given, unconditional, if the bureaucracy is minimal and it sufficiently meets people's needs, even though people's needs differ. Exactly. It should therefore be responsive, dynamic, a complement to other programs and services with the aim of equitable access and opportunity for all. They really want to talk to you? I'm joking. Regardless of specifics, we need a floor beneath which no one can fall. This is a hard concept to grasp, kind of like we can't collectively accept a financial ceiling. So billionaires' bank accounts just keep on climbing unimpeded, less regulated than the hoops we all jump through to prove we are deserving and assistance is needed. Like seas, poverty keeps rising, and the rift between the poor and rich keeps widening. The repercussions of this income inequality are so clear and so harmful, It's understandable we might try to shirk responsibility or deny our involvement. If we're not in policy or politics, we might think we are absolved from the problem or from trying to solve it. Be that poverty or other inequities, it's all related. So, to bring it back to the changing of stories, to bring it back to the shifting of minds, we can start in our own communities, address our own biases, we can start close by. If I were to start with mine, I'd have to admit that I too have a productivity complex. And I want people to know I work hard enough so I can feel worthy myself. This is a tired idea that gets in my way of fighting for the rights of everybody else. What stories have we internalized that convinced us only certain work is worthy, and dignity must be earned by toiling endlessly and buying into the same systems that are stripping the earth of its resources and robbing the people of our joy? Joy should be affordable, like food and housing and care, like medicine and transportation, and the ability to participate in our communities wherever and however we are. A basic income guarantee could be a part of this. It could also be a move towards economic equity, an affirmation of dignity. It could help reduce gender-based violence and increase gender equality. It could be something to help lift people from poverty, a goal that this country has promised, a vow that the United Nations has sworn. Here on offer is but one of the tools we could use. Yes, it is doable. Yes, people will still contribute as much or more as they used to, while being valued intrinsically. Our basic human dignity, our rights, even our righteous joy afford it. Indeed, we can afford it, but it is not yet common knowledge. So let's change the story and share the big news. Thank you.
Now we have to say thank you, and that just feels not enough after sharing that. So, Tanya, from all of us, thank you so much for sharing the gift of that powerful and reflective poem. What a beautiful way to tie everything up, and just a beautiful gift to leave us with as we leave today. So thank you. And one last tiny little piece of business before we let you go enjoy that beautiful evening. Just a reminder that those cards with the QR codes on it do have links with more information. And also there is a sign-up sheet. Where? At the registration table, there's a sign-up sheet that you can fill out for folks who would like to receive more information in the future regarding basic income guarantees and various initiatives that are happening. So you can add your name to that, and you will stay in the loop.
Can I just jump in with one thing?
Of course.
Sorry, just while we're in the, I forgot to mention that you don't take my word for it. There's many artist testimonies that are out in the lobby, and they're really beautiful, and I would love for you to read their words. And there's also an incredible report called the Manoramo Report on artists and beyond. It's called Beyond Precarity, and there's also a QR code to that, and it is a really informative document. So if you're in the realm of looking for more information and wanting to stay connected, there's some posters out in the lobby that will lead you in the way of more information in that regard.
Thanks so much for adding that.
Thank you.
And one other detail, too, that I feel like makes sense to add on. As you're chewing and reflecting on all the things that you've shared and learned and such today, don't forget about the Community Voices board that's out there. Feel free, even if you want to take a card home tonight to reflect on it or to write something to bring back tomorrow. But just a reminder, that'll still be there tomorrow, and please add to and go read some of the other voices there if you'd like.
So final Final thank you. Final thank you to our panelists and to Alexia for her brilliant job as our moderator tonight. Thank you, Alexia. And final word of go safely this evening, find joy in the rest of the evening, and we wish you a really wonderful day tomorrow. Good night, everyone.